My mom forced me to forgive my cheating boyfriend. Years later, I discovered why she was so desperate. I never thought my life would turn out this way. Looking back at my high school days, everything seemed perfect. I had two amazing best friends, Jake and Maya. We were inseparable since elementary school, mainly because our families had known each other forever. Our dads went to college together, and even though Jake's family lived abroad for a few years, we stayed close. The three of us grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. Our houses were on the same street, and we spent most of our time at each other's places. Jake lived in the blue house at the corner, Maya in the white one next to it, and mine was the brick house 2 doors down. Our parents would joke that they never had to call us for dinner because they always knew exactly where to find us. We were the trio everyone knew about in school. Jake was a year older, but ended up in our class after his family moved back from Germany. His dad's job had taken them there for a few years, but they came back when Jake was 12. It was like he never left. We picked up right where we left off. When I started dating Jake at 15, it felt like everything was falling into place. We had big plans, same college, future together, the whole deal. Maya was always there with us, and some people would joke about her being the extra wheel, but honestly, we were all so close that it never felt that way. Our families spent every holiday together. Thanksgiving would be at Maya's, Christmas at Jake's, and New Year's at our place. Our moms would cook together, our dads would watch football and tell the same old college stories, and we kids would just hang out, playing video games or watching movies in the basement. It was perfect, at least that's what I thought. Jake and I dated for 2 years, and they were the best years of my life. We did everything together, studied, went to movies, attended school events. He was my first real boyfriend, and I thought he'd be my last. We talked about going to state university together, getting an apartment after graduation, and eventually getting married. Maya was going to be my maid of honor. We'd planned it all out. Everything changed during our senior year. It was around October when I first noticed Maya acting strange. She started missing classes, looking sick, and avoiding lunch. At first, I thought she was just stressed about college applications, but then one day, I found her crying in the school bathroom. When I saw those pregnancy tests in her hands, my world stopped. She was terrified and begged me to help her. She wouldn't tell me who the father was, but being her best friend, I stood by her side. For a whole month, I did everything I could to help her. I bought her vitamins, made sure she ate properly, and kept her secret. I would bring her crackers when she felt nauseous, and cover for her when she needed to leave class suddenly. I was the only one she confided in about her fears and worries. We spent hours in her room, talking about what she would do, how she would finish school, and what her parents would say. Finally, I convinced her to tell her parents before it became obvious. She asked me to be there when she broke the news. That day changed everything. Our parents gathered in Maya's living room, thinking it was just another teenage problem we needed help with. Maya sat there, shaking and crying, barely able to speak. Her mom kept asking who the father was, but Maya couldn't even say it. She just kept crying. 2 days later, my mom started acting weird, telling me to focus on my studies and stay away from Maya. She made excuses like I needed to prepare for finals, or that I shouldn't get distracted by other people's problems. I didn't understand why until I showed up at Maya's house unannounced one evening after school. I had brought her favorite snacks and some pregnancy magazines I'd bought from the store. I walked into a scene I'll never forget. Jake was there with his parents, and my parents were there too. Everyone was crying. Maya was sitting on the couch, Jake next to her, both looking at the floor. My mom tried to rush me out, saying it wasn't my business, but I figured it out instantly. The baby was Jake's. My boyfriend and my best friend had betrayed me. I screamed at them both. The magazines fell from my hands, scattering across the floor. They tried to explain, but what explanation could possibly make this okay? My parents had to drag me out of there because I was causing such a scene. I went home and shut myself in my room for days. I didn't eat, didn't sleep, just lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how the two people I trusted most could do this to me. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal, it was how everyone reacted. My family, especially my mom, acted like I was overreacting. "You'll find someone better," she'd say, or "don't spoil everyone's happiness." She'd bring me food and act like everything was normal, telling me about Maya's doctor appointments like I should be interested. My younger sister, who was dating Maya's brother at the time, told me I should have seen it coming since we were always together. She'd roll her eyes when I cried and tell me to grow up. School became unbearable. Jake and Maya dropped out, him because of bullying, her because of the pregnancy. I was left alone to face everyone's whispers and stares. People who used to be friendly suddenly avoided me or gave me pitying looks. Having them as neighbors made it impossible to avoid seeing them together, going to doctor appointments, taking walks. My family kept telling me to look away and move on, but how could I when they were constantly talking about the baby, acting like future grandparents? My mental health deteriorated rapidly. I stopped eating regularly, couldn't sleep, and my grades started dropping. Everyone was so focused on the upcoming baby that no one noticed how much I was suffering. My mom was busy helping Maya's mom plan the baby shower, buying little onesies and decorations. My dad tried to check on me sometimes, but he didn't know what to say, so he'd just pat my shoulder and walk away. I started planning my escape, selling everything I owned: books, electronics, jewelry. I kept the money hidden in an old sock at the back of my drawer. I researched nearby cities, looking for cheap places to stay and jobs that didn't require experience. On the day of my final exams, I told my family I was going on a trek with friends. They were so tired of my attitude that they didn't even question it. I left that day and didn't look back. I moved to a nearby city, stayed in a hostel, and started waiting tables. The hostel wasn't great, 6 girls in one room, sharing a tiny bathroom, but it felt better than being at home. My parents tried to contact me through every possible means: phone, email, different email addresses. I changed my number and email, only telling my sister that I was never coming back. That was the last time I spoke to any of them. Living alone wasn't easy, but I managed. My first job was at a small diner where I worked 12-hour shifts. The pay wasn't great, but the regular customers tipped well, and I could eat leftover food at the end of my shift. I shared the hostel room with other girls who were also trying to make it on their own. We weren't friends exactly, but we looked out for each other. After 2 years of waiting tables, I got a job as a receptionist at a local dentist's office. The work was easier on my feet, and I learned how to use a computer properly. I saved every penny I could, shopping at thrift stores and walking everywhere to save bus fare. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night, wondering what was happening back home, but I pushed those thoughts away. My big break came when I landed a job in sales at a software company. The basic salary wasn't much, but the commissions were good. I worked hard, stayed late, and learned everything I could. That's where I met Tom. He worked in marketing, and we often crossed paths during lunch breaks. One day, he asked why I always ate alone in the break room. We started talking, and I found out he had his own family problems. His mom died when he was young, and his dad married a woman barely older than Tom. She made his life miserable until he left home at 18. He understood what it was like to walk away from family, to start over with nothing. After a year of friendship, Tom offered to help me go to college. He said I could pay him back later, but he wanted me to have better opportunities. At first, I refused. It felt wrong to take money from someone I'd known for such a short time. But he insisted, saying he believed in me and wanted to invest in my future. I enrolled in evening classes at the local community college while keeping my sales job during the day. It was exhausting, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was moving forward. Tom supported me through it all, not just financially but emotionally too. He'd help me study, bring me coffee during late-night cramming sessions, and never once made me feel like I owed him anything. 4 years later, I graduated with an accounting degree. On my first day at my new job as a junior accountant, Tom took me out to celebrate. Instead of just dinner, he proposed. I said yes without hesitation. We got married in a small ceremony a year later, just us and a few friends from work. Sometimes I wished my family could be there, but I'd made peace with my decision to leave. Life settled into a comfortable routine. We bought a small house, adopted a dog, and 2 years later had our son, David. I loved being a mom, and Tom was an amazing father. Watching them together made me realize what a real family should feel like: supportive, loving, without conditions or complications. Then came the day that changed everything again. We were at Disney World for David's 7th birthday when I heard someone calling my name. I turned around and saw my sister standing there, her mouth open in shock. She had 2 kids with her, and her husband, Maya's brother, was holding their youngest. I froze, not knowing what to do. David, not understanding the tension, ran over to play with his cousins. Tom squeezed my hand, silently supporting whatever decision I made. My sister started crying, and before I knew it, I was hugging her. We stood there crying while our kids played together, oblivious to the years of silence between us. She apologized for not supporting me back then, for taking their side without understanding my pain. Her husband also apologized, saying he was too young to understand the situation properly. We spent the rest of the day together, and it felt okay. Not perfect, but okay. The kids got along great, and Tom hit it off with my brother-in-law, talking about sports and work. As we were leaving, my sister showed me pictures of our brother's kids. I hadn't even known he was married. While scrolling through her phone, I saw a family photo that included Jake and Maya. They had gotten married and had 2 more kids after their first. I just smiled and changed the subject. My sister wanted to tell me more about them, but seeing my disinterest, she stopped. Before we left, we exchanged phone numbers. A few days later, she texted asking if she could share my number with Mom. I wasn't sure. The thought of talking to my mother brought back all those painful memories. But Tom encouraged me to give it a chance. He said that holding on to anger only hurt me, and maybe it was time to let my family back into my life. I agreed, and within an hour, my phone rang. It was Mom, sobbing, saying how sorry she was for everything. She begged to meet her grandson, saying she'd been following my sister's social media just to catch glimpses of my life. She wanted us to visit, to try and make things right. I didn't say yes right away. I needed time to think about it, to decide if I was ready to face everything I'd run away from. Tom supported my decision either way, but he gently suggested that David deserved to know his grandparents, and maybe it was time to heal old wounds. After a lot of thinking, I decided to visit my parents. Tom took time off work, and we planned a weekend trip. The whole drive there, my stomach was in knots. David was excited about meeting his grandparents, but I kept wondering if I was making a mistake. When we pulled up to my old house, everything looked exactly the same. The brick exterior, the flower beds Mom always kept perfect, even Dad's old rocking chair on the porch. My parents came out as soon as they heard our car. Mom was crying before she even reached us, and Dad looked like he was trying hard not to cry too. They hugged me for what felt like forever. Then they met Tom and David, showering them both with attention and love. My brother came over with his wife and baby, and my sister brought her family too. The house was full of noise and laughter, just like it used to be. That first day was actually nice. Mom had cooked all my favorite foods, and Dad kept showing David his collection of model trains. Tom fit in perfectly, talking with everyone and making them laugh. For a moment, it felt like maybe everything could be okay. The second day started well too. I was in the kitchen with my sister, catching up on all the years we'd missed when Mom came in. She started talking about how I'd found a better man than Jake, saying I'd overreacted to the whole situation back then. My sister tried to stop her, but Mom kept going. Then she dropped the bomb. She wanted me to forgive Jake and Maya. She said their kids were so sweet, and it was embarrassing that I still wouldn't talk to them. When I said no, she started talking about Jesus and forgiveness. Then she mentioned that Maya wanted to meet me and Tom, asking if she could invite them for dinner. I was ready to leave right then. My sister got angry at Mom, asking why she'd told Maya I was visiting. Mom claimed Maya's dad had seen me through the window and told Maya, who then called Mom asking to meet. The whole thing felt wrong. Later, in my old bedroom, my sister told me something that made everything click. She said Mom had a weird obsession with Maya's family. She told me about her own marriage problems last year. When she mentioned possibly divorcing her husband, Mom completely lost it. She told my sister that no matter what happened, even if her husband cheated, there could be no divorce because they couldn't ruin their friendship with Maya's family. We started remembering other strange things from our childhood. How Mom always seemed to favor Maya and her brother over us. How she always took their side in any argument. Back then, it didn't seem weird because Maya was my best friend and her brother was my sister's boyfriend. But looking back, it was not normal. A week after we returned home, everything exploded. Tom had gone to a neighboring town for work and saw something that changed everything. He showed me a video on his phone. It was Mom making out with Maya's dad at a bar. Just watching it made me sick to my stomach. Suddenly, Mom's obsession with maintaining relationships with their family made perfect sense. I called my sister immediately. She drove 3 hours just to see the video, and she was as shocked as I was. She couldn't even tell her husband. How do you tell someone their father was kissing your mother? We spent weeks trying to figure out what to do. Should we tell Dad? Confront Mom? Pretend we never saw it? My sister was falling apart. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't look at her husband without thinking about the video. Finally, we decided to tell our brother, hoping he might have some ideas about what to do. That was probably our biggest mistake, or maybe it was exactly what needed to happen. Our brother, who had always been the quiet one, the peacemaker, completely lost it. He stormed into our parents' house and confronted Mom in front of Dad. He showed them the video right there. Mom tried to deny it at first, but there was no denying what was clearly shown on the screen. Then things really got crazy. Dad went straight to Maya's house and showed the video to her mom. Both families fell apart that day. Mom and Maya's dad tried to claim it was a recent thing, a midlife crisis, but their stories didn't match up. Under pressure, they finally admitted the truth. They'd been having an affair for over 25 years, basically our entire lives. Dad tried to keep it together at first. He said he needed time to think, to process everything. But one day, he showed up at my house unexpectedly. He just stood on my doorstep, looking lost. When I opened the door, he hugged me and broke down crying. He said he finally understood what I went through when Jake and Maya betrayed me. He was experiencing the same thing with his best friend and his wife. Mom kept telling Dad the same thing she told me years ago, to forgive and move on. But Dad couldn't do it. He called all three of us, me, my sister, and my brother, to tell us he was filing for divorce. We all supported his decision. How could we not, after everything? When Mom found out about the divorce, she fainted. She begged Dad for another chance, crying about keeping the family together. My sister, who was there when this happened, finally lost her patience. She told Mom exactly what she thought about her actions, about how she'd hurt everyone in the family, about how she'd chosen her affair over her own children's happiness. The same thing happened in Maya's family. Her mom filed for divorce too. Now both houses that were once so full of life and laughter stand half empty. Mom lives alone in our old house, and Maya's dad lives alone in his. Everyone says they'll probably move in together now that everything's out in the open. Maybe that's what they wanted all along. My sister is having the hardest time with all of this. Both sides of her family are falling apart, her parents and her in-laws. Her marriage is struggling too. Every time she looks at her husband, she sees his family, and every time she looks at Mom, she sees the betrayal. I hope they can work through it, but I understand why it's so hard. Tom has been my rock through all of this. He holds me when I cry about the years we lost because of Mom's lies. He plays with David and makes sure our son knows none of this is his fault. He reminds me that while we can't choose our blood family, we can choose who we keep in our lives. Looking back, I understand why Mom was so quick to dismiss my pain when Jake and Maya betrayed me. She was living the same lie, betraying Dad with his best friend. Maybe seeing me hurt reminded her of her own guilt. Maybe that's why she pushed so hard for me to forgive them, because she needed forgiveness herself. I don't hate Mom anymore. I feel sorry for her, in a way. She spent 25 years living a lie, hurting everyone around her, and for what? A few stolen moments with someone else's husband? But I can't forgive her either, not yet. Not when I think about all the years I spent feeling alone and unwanted, thinking there was something wrong with me because my own mother wouldn't support me when I needed her most. Dad is doing better now. He's staying with my brother while the divorce proceedings go on. He spends a lot of time with David, making up for lost years. Sometimes I catch him just watching Tom and me together, and he gets this sad look in his eyes. I think he's remembering his own marriage, wondering if any of it was real. The truth is, none of us will ever be the same after this. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we needed everything to fall apart so we could rebuild it properly this time, without lies and secrets poisoning every relationship. I have my own family now, Tom, David, and a baby girl on the way. We're building our life on truth and trust, and that's all I can really ask for. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.